Hello everyone, welcome to Redmen Radio, the Liverpool podcast from me, Paul Machin, and that man
me, Chris Pager.
Ooh, was that your come to bed voice?
I don't get to use it often, so I don't know.
Come to bed, girls! Kick-off question this week comes from Andy Lochry on Twitter. Which current Liverpool player would last the longest in the Royal Rumble? We've got quite a few wrestling-themed questions on the Q&A this week, but we'll get to this one first. I think there's an obvious shout, because it's the obvious shout for every question ever at the moment, and that's Virgil van Dijk.
Joel Matip.
Go on, why?
Because I think, first off, you're right, Virgil van Dijk is the obvious shout, but I think Matip will be put in first as the big man and he'll have the longest, whereas I think Virgil, you kind of just want him to win. And I think, there's different ways of doing it. Sometimes they put the big man in at the beginning, sometimes they put them in right at the end just to screw everyone up, and he waltzes to victory. I feel like Matip would be there for I don't know, is it 32 people? How many people go into the room? 30, right? So he's there, number one, lasts till Virgil comes in, and then Virgil just throws him over the top rope.
He's everyone's going, whoa, the big man's in here and he survives, and then Virgil comes in and shows him what a big man actually looks like, and just one touch, clothesline. The Matip stuff is, I think Matip is like, whenever they bring out another big fella, and he's not very good, and he just gets battered by everyone, and he gets double teamed and he gets thrown over. Whereas Van Dijk's the kind who, he's the Undertaker, isn't he? Basically, he's just the kind of one who come in and, I don't think Van Dijk would win it because inevitably the big fellas are often get ganged up on. It's someone else. It tends to be like a bit smaller, but a top guy. So it's like it's a Bobby Firmino, because I think he's just got all the fucking tricks in the book, and he's defo got that, when they go over the top rope and they hang on and they pull themselves back up again. I bet Firmino's
flip themselves back into the ring.
I guarantee he's got something in his house where he can practice that.
Okay.
Just just random, I bet it's not even a full ring. I bet he's got just a set of one side of a ring set up in one room of his house. Wouldn't surprise me at all. And there's like a load
I'd take the bet though.
Yeah, there's probably like a load of bowler hats nailed to a wall, and just melted records hanging off couches and stuff,
loads of masks.
Yeah, kabuki masks everywhere.
Majoras.
But backwards and suspended from the ceiling. Because he's just fucking weird, isn't he? So you know what I mean? It wouldn't surprise me at all. So let us know which current Liverpool player you think would last longest in the Royal Rumble. News, not so much in brief this week because we haven't got two games to talk about, so we're gonna dive into the news a little bit more. Joe Gomez, we heard last week, Chris suffered an injury setback.
I'll be honest, Paul, I can't really keep up with all the injury setbacks that we've had at the moment. I'm coming in every day who's fit, who's injured again, how long are they out for? It just seems to be every single day you're coming into something new at the moment,
and it's speculation largely as well. Now we're recording this before Klopp's pre-Leicester press conference, so there will hopefully be a little bit more clarity off the back of that, but equally there might not, because Jurgen, his famous line is, why should I let you know more about my team selections, because no one else seems to have to do this. The Gomez one though is that's a big one for me. I think we were hoping that he was going to be back in training now-ish, so that we're starting to gear up to get him ready for Bayern Munich, because obviously we know Van Dijk's not going to be available for that. I can't imagine that. Sorry, bear with me a second.
It's the wires, don't worry about it, it's fine. It's been like this for 2 weeks.
Why is there a random wire just not
because the
plugged
wire
in?
that's in now doesn't work, and we need to cut this off and pull it out, and we've just not done it yet.
Brilliant.
It's getting sorted today.
Of course it is, Tom. It's getting sorted. Brilliant.
Looks good though.
Yeah, so we are facing up to a world now where we're going to have to put a lot of reliance on Matip, and we don't even know where Lovren's at the moment. You presume Lovren will be back.
Rumours are that Lovren could start if Van Dijk's a miss. I think the game against Leicester, I'd personally play Van Dijk at 50% fitness. I think he's that important to us at the moment, and I can't imagine the Klopp's going to give us too much in the press conference. But the Gomez one, you're right, it's a big blow, and I wonder if we'd have known how long he was going to be out for, would we actually have got rid of Nathaniel Klein? And I think it's easy to look back with hindsight and say that, but I actually do think in this instance you maybe don't, because he's so important not only at right back but also at centre half. I mean, more so at centre half. I think he was in such good form. He will be out for probably nearly 3 months, you'd think, at the time of coming back into the side. How long is it going to take to get back up to match fitness? I think if he was out for 4 to 6 weeks, maybe not too much. Yeah. But, 3 months is a long time.
Yeah, it's one of them. At the minute, we are all in that mindset. Well, we're all largely positive, and I'll talk a bit more about it when we get into the Leicester stuff, of course. But these are the things where you don't want this to be a pivotal part of the season. We've come through January. We've got, at least we haven't had to play all the extra games. Let's continue to buy into that narrative that we're happy that Liverpool didn't have more FA Cup and League Cup action for the sake of the point. It would have been nice to come out of this little break a bit more ready, whereas as it turns out, and hopefully hopefully we'll know a bit more, but a day before we return to action, we're looking at potentially no Van Dijk, potentially no Lovren, definitely no Gomez, almost certainly no Trent Alexander-Arnold, and there was even sort of Fabinho with that little thing as well.
Wijnaldum as well. I think this is the thing, though. I think it is important to recognise where we are in our season. I think it's important to recognise, I think, that fatigue plays a massive part in injuries. And that's not to say that tired players, people who aren't tired don't get injured. They do. Yeah. That can happen. But the more fatigued you are, the more likely you are to pick up an illness or an injury of some description. So it's bad now. With the extra games, it could have been a lot worse. So that's not to say that it definitely would have been, by the way. Yeah. But we could have been teetering on the edge of a complete crisis all across the board. So I think that, unfortunately for us, or fortunately for us, we are probably in a better position because of the lack of games, but we could be in a really, really bad position. And listen, we've got players that can do a job right now. I think the likes of Fabinho will be important over the next few games, probably more as a defender than we'd imagined. And we'll be looking to get players back. Will that have a knock-on in a couple of months' time? Maybe. But right now, Klopp's taking it a game at a time. I think you've kind of got to trust him on that he's going to put the team out that he thinks can get 3 points in the next game. Yeah,
definitely. We saw a really hot transfer rumour drop on Monday, or Sunday, Monday, that Abdulkadir Omur from Trabzonspor had agreed a deal to move to Liverpool at the end of the season.
Shook hands on it, hadn't we?
Shook hands, presumably, according to dodgy Turkish translation. Rubbished by the club. James Pearce stepped up to the plate in solid James Pearce fashion. Nailed it. It wasn't even I don't think a Babe Ruth style points to the fences and swings. More like he just got on top of it and pummeled it to death before it even had a chance to grow legs. This is I've done a couple of news shows on this, and this has got all the hallmarks of an agent just trying to drum up more interest, because he's being linked to Newcastle and Crystal Palace.
You don't want that as an agent.
No,
you don't want that at all. No. Liverpool's big clicks, big news, isn't it? I think I always find that whenever I look into those transfer rumours, you type in the player's name and you type Liverpool,
then type Arsenal,
and then type Man United, and you tend to find that they're all linked in some way, shape or form.
Completely on that. And by all accounts, Liverpool have scouted them. So, I mean, you're his agent. You can say with absolute certainty, Liverpool have had a look. Liverpool are interested.
But does that mean you can say you've shook hands on the deal?
Well, I know. This is where it starts again. And I mean, it was funny because the account that this came from was a verified Twitter account and blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, we all start to stretch into the world of how many of us actually speak Turkish. I don't. I use Google Translate, which leads you to some hilarious
weird
translations.
Wonderful translations.
It's one of the highlights of my every transfer window for me. But yeah, it looks a decent play. He scored a few goals this season, but he, you do tend to look at it, and I always, look, we've got a decent record, or Klopp's got a decent record of pulling players from obscurity and making things out of them. So it might not be for nothing ultimately, but I think Liverpool are more in a world now where the players that Liverpool are going to sign are known entities. I think
probably, at the younger level, maybe not. I think if they're going straight into
the 15, 16, I think you're right. You can, because no one knows
and maybe 19s as well, and it'd probably even go up to 21s at some point.
I think so. are we going to be in for 19, 20-year-olds that Man United, Arsenal, Chelsea, etc. are not in for?
No, unknown to fans.
Oh, right.
I think that's a difference, isn't it? You know what I mean? I think it comes down to this, Paul. Liverpool will scout players. You think they sign every one of them? No,
Yeah,
they clearly don't.
Yeah.
You know, there's going to be hundreds of players that Liverpool have scouted over the last 5 years that Liverpool haven't signed. That's what you do. You scout them for a reason. You scout them to work out whether you think they're good enough for your football club.
And to justify your wage if you're a scout.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just to get away from the house. For
Why
a
not?
bit, yeah.
Why not? You know, you don't want to watch Coronation Street every night that it's on. Sometimes it's good to just get out of the house.
Going to Fleetwood. Are you really going to find a player from Fleetwood? You never know.
But there are those diamonds in the rough. They still exist in football, and they always will do. And people are always searching for that because that's where you get the most value, isn't it? I think, you know, first of all, you might not have to compete on wages and transfer fees. Liverpool will be looking at across the board at players, known entities, non-known entities. It's just the way that the world is.
That's it. My feeling on this is if Liverpool are going to be linked to like anyone aged between 18 and 21, then one of the other big Chelsea or Man City will also be in for them because that's just the nature of that. I mean, every pretty much with the exception of the lads we've signed from the Championship, almost all of our signings have also been linked with one of our major.
Maybe I don't remember Robertson getting linked with anybody, and he's older than that.
Apart from the players we signed from the Championship, so like.
He was Premier League at the time, wasn't
but you know what I mean? Like
so this is a guy
the Shakiris, the Robbos, the Geenies.
But I don't know. I'm not sure Shaqiri was linked anywhere else. I think
exactly that's what I'm saying.
So I think that kind of proves the point. If they're doing it with established Premier League players, they'll be doing it with unders as well.
Yeah. Rafa Honigstein, I mean, I got this via Anfield HQ, so treat it as you will. I didn't see this directly, but he said that. I asked about the Timo Werner stuff. He said like Klopp's a big fan and he would suit Liverpool's style of play, but thinks Liverpool are much more interested in signing a versatile centre back with the ability to deputise in wide areas, much like Joe Gomez. This is one of those things where our squad's fine for how it is right now. I was having a conversation with my uncle at the weekend about this. This is the beauty of I think where Liverpool are is we've got the best squad we've probably had in the Premier League era. Maybe apart from like that golden generation that was ruined during the Spice Boys era with Fowler, McManaman, etc. And yet I could still look at Liverpool's squad, and if I was being utterly ruthless and I knew we had money to spend, I could. There's probably 4 or 5 players easy that I feel we could upgrade on in the summer, and I don't fear for the defence at the moment. But if you could go and get someone as good as Joe Gomez, another Joe Gomez, well. You just would, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks very much, Joe Matip. Thanks very much, Dejan Lovren, etc. for your service. But we can get. I think we can get better.
Yeah, I think we can get better. And we can get younger as well. I think that's the other thing, isn't it? Matip and Lovren are peak ages for centre halves right now, but you've got to make sure that the next ones are coming through as well. And Joe Gomez would allow you to do that. I think you've got a right back probably in Trent Alexander-Arnold who's going to be there for the next maybe let's say 5 years. You're looking to sign another right back in. Well, it's not going to be. Well, I'll tell you what. Nathaniel Klein was a perfect example. It's not going to be a 27-year-old who's going to sit behind a 20-year-old for 5 years, is it? You're going to have to get that next guy up almost, or get a guy with a load of confidence and a load of ability who thinks that he can break into that. I think Dejan Lovren, again, the timing of his career, he wants to be challenging for trophies in the first team, and I think right now you could question whether he is a first teamer. Joel Matip will be exactly the same. How long are they going to be willing to sit behind Joe Gomez for? And the versatility side of things, Klopp's wanted that across the board in his attacking players since he moved into the club. It only now is starting to filter into the defensive side of stuff, because now he's got the defence that he wants, and I think now he's starting to build that side of the squad up. I think the times when you see a left back and solely a left back on the bench are probably gone for Jurgen Klopp. He wants players who can fill in at multiple positions because you only get 7 subs. You've got 11 places to fill on the field if an injury was to occur. So there's not enough there, is there? So it makes perfect sense that you're going to want somebody who can switch, or somebody in your first team who can move aside. Absolutely. To bring a centre half in.
It's a daft example, but like if you play Ultimate Team or you play My Club on PES, don't put a keeper on the bench because I want as many options, but you can deal with your keeper being a bit out of form in that instance. You want that extra. You want to be able to do the things that you do, the positive things on the pitch to the best of your ability. So you're dead right on that, and that's why you can see like like Keanu Hoover, you can see why he likes him, because there's a lad who can play all across the back three in terms of his confidence, and we'll see as he develops. But he looks like he's got the ability on the ball that if you needed to drop him in a DM, you could do, because he's not going to panic in possession, which is going to compromise everything again that you do in terms of your style or whatever. So yeah, you're dead right. It's just mobility, isn't it? Game intelligence, ability on the ball, mobility. If you've got those, you can and you're of a decent height. It's now it becomes a bigger ask the more you add those things, of course. But that's what we want. We want athletes, intelligent athletes all over the pitch.
And also, like, we used to talk about this all the time, about how our centre-backs were no good in space, and I think Joe Matip and Dejan Lovren were the two that we used to talk about a lot. And, you know, going back even further, Martin Skrtel, for example, think about his times at right-back that we've seen him just absolutely rinsed by the likes of Henry, who did that to a lot of players, by the way, right-backs or centre-backs, it didn't seem to matter, by the way. But also, you know, we know our full-backs bomb on, and our centre-backs have to cover that space sometimes. And so having a guy that is comfortable tackling in that area of the field and knows his defensive responsibilities when he is dragged wide, it makes him a better centre-back for being able to play that right-back, and a better fit for our system. Yeah,
and we're just in that position now where we've got them. We'll have the money to spend. We'll buy what needs to be bought. There's no more, we'll have to make do and amend in certain things, because we're now in a situation where we don't need to go out and buy 4 £50 million players to make us competitive. We're competitive. We just need to keep that turning over. You've got a combination of lads coming up from the academy, and then you've got you buy a couple of bits and pieces, that genuine top quality players to bolster what you do. And we might find that centre back thing does come from within. It might be just 2 seasons too soon for Hoover as an example. But we'll talk about him in a bit. You might find Camacho might just become an absolute revelation at right back, and then all of a sudden you don't really need Joe Gomez to do that, so it changes your thinking in other areas and so on. So no, it is interesting, but that word versatile, I think you're right, I think will be key to everything we do. Same with the forward thing, we're going to be linked with centre forwards all summer, guaranteed. How long? We're on the countdown to the first Karim Benzema link, by the way. Everyone, just strap yourselves in. And to the first Robert Lewandowski link, guaranteed. Klopp won't buy a centre forward like that. No, he won't be. Timo Werner, the reason we're linked to him is because exactly he can do the thing. The reason we were linked with Nabil Fekir, we all had him pegged as being like the attacking mid, but he could have played left wing, right wing, and as a false nine if we needed to as well. Absolutely. Simon Mignolet's been interviewed. I think he was interviewed in the Liverpool Echo. Apologies for not crediting that properly. But I talked a little bit about, he was talking about Alisson. I covered this on the news show yesterday, which I'll come to in a sec. But he was also ruling out a January move, and he said definitely nothing will happen this month, and we'll see what happens in the summer. Hopefully it will be a story for after we've won the Premier League and the Champions League. I've said before, I don't want to be sat on the bench. I'll be 31 in March. Of course I want to play, but in certain circumstances you have to accept the situation you're in. Something I can't control myself. All I can control is my training and being there for the team. I think you said the other week, all the credit in the world to Simon Mignolet, really. You know, he could have been an absolute bellend this season. And there probably is something to the fact that, you know, he's a younger man, but he's probably learning off Alisson because he's a better goalkeeper than him. He's there, he's in and around there, he's comfortable, he's not going to move out, and there's a good chance, you know, he's going to be involved, whether in an active sense or not, in a, you know, a Premier League title challenge and possibly a good run in the Champions League again. Yeah, I like that. I like all of that coming out from him because, again, he doesn't need to say all this stuff.
I think the interesting thing for me is what you've just said there about probably learning from Alisson. And, you know, I get that Simon Mignolet wants to play football, and I think that's good. That's a trait that you want in a number two. You know, career number two's not something I'd ever think, yeah, what a guy. You know what I mean? You clearly want to play football and stuff, but I think the ambition that Mignolet's got will probably have informed this decision. And what I mean by that is Simon Mignolet might want to be a number one, but he doesn't want to be a number one at Sunderland again. He could go and be a number one at Sunderland again, or a team, equivalent team nowadays of them, bottom half of the Premier League, looking to
go. He's much too good for Sunderland
nowadays. Yeah, he is, but also, where does he want to go with his career? Does he want to go for a mid-table club, or does he want to try and stay at a top club? And I think if he wants to try and stay at a top club, learning what Alisson's doing at Liverpool is probably going to help him, because he's never going to get 20% better.
Yeah.
But he might get 5% better, and he might be able to do a job at a top 4 side.
Well, all of a sudden, we talk about this all the time, about players who left Man United and they go to, like Phil Neville going to Everton, and we never rated Phil Neville as a footballer, but he was a good footballer for Everton because he carried a wealth of experience with him when he moved to that side. Simon Mignolet doesn't suit our style of play. I think that's been evident for all to see. But if for him, in terms of his next career move, in terms of getting your CV sorted, if you can hang on at Liverpool for this season, and if Liverpool do win a league title, he gets to say he was there. He's experienced it, and yes, he hasn't been the active guy who's responsible for achieving it per se. God, I hope not, because I don't think my heart could take that. But he gets to. It's just a something, isn't it? It's a something in your dressing room. You go to another club, it adds value to you because you've been in and amongst that. It's something you can say, I was there, I know how this is done, etc, etc. When we go back, we look at our squad and we list things that players have won. We're happy to throw in Daniel Sturridge as a league title winner. Yeah, what did he do? What did he really do in that regard? So yeah, Mignolet, I think it's smart in his regard, as you say. He's trained, and he's never going to get better trained than he's getting at Liverpool right now. And again, in terms of the challenge and the experience of all that stuff around it. One last time, you've stuck it out at Liverpool all this time. You've been lambasted at times throughout all these things. There's probably something that it would put a nice full stop on his Liverpool career, I think, if we could get to it and we could lift some major silverware.
And also, look, he's probably want to sell a few books in a few years' time, and keeping this story under wraps for now is probably going to help him.
How
10
I
years'
helped
time.
Alisson become a Premier League winner. It's interesting as well because he talked about Alisson, and again, it talks about him accepting his role as a number 2 more, and how it's easier to accept when you've got someone like Alisson there. Basically, he said he's definitely top 5.
Slide Digger Karius, by the way.
No, exactly. Definitely top 5 and possibly best in the world. And again, it's just, this is all. I like all this. The point is, there's nothing to be gained from him rocking the boat. To be slightly cynical on it, but
if you were to pick a number off the top of your head, Paul, of where Simon Mignolet 7th best goalkeeper in the world. Wow. The question is, where would Simon Mignolet be in those those lists? Because
of the best goalkeepers in the world,
he's probably top 30 or 40, maybe.
Let's go. There's loads of logics, and people can pull apart my logic on this to their heart's content in comments or on Twitter.
7th.
Yeah. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that you've got the 5 best clubs. You've got 4 big European leagues.
Yeah,
you've actually got
3 in it. 3 in Spain.
You're averaging 5 teams a league for the sake of it across all those leagues. So you're talking 20 teams. So and he's the second choice goalkeeper for one of those teams. So he's probably top 20. Now that doesn't factor in. You've got is he better than Kasper Schmeichel?
Question.
Probably not. So you're right. Mignolet probably is in the top. Debate is split hairs.
He's in the top 50.
He's
I would guess
100%
probably
in the top 50
top 40.
I would suggest top 30 is probably right.
Okay, so for a guy like that, who, let's be honest, if I was top 30 in the world at anything, that would be a really big achievement. I'm probably top 30 at whinging. Well, I'm really good at whinging.
You're top 30 in tennis. You could come home with you could win something. Maybe you could win Wimbledon if you were in the top 30 in tennis.
Right. Not so many can't win Wimbledon.
Federer and Nadal, but
retire at some point, and Murray still has his issues. But the thing is, I think as somebody who's, let's be honest, has climbed to the top of his profession, because there's hundreds of thousands of goalkeepers in the world and he's top 30, let's say, to be able to sit there and think, I'm not as good as him, and actually say that in an interview, a guy who's 4 or 5 years younger than him, that must take a little bit of something as well, to be a bit of a realist on things, and then to go, I can get better because of him, and try and force your way into a side. I think they're good traits to have in a person, never mind a football player.
I was joking on the news show yesterday about how you're like, no, I'm going to stay here and fight my life. I am the best man for the job. And then Alisson walks in and you just go, yeah, no, I'm not. No. He just walks in and you're like, okay, yeah, fair enough. Number two. Can I have a contract extension? Am I alright to just? Is it fine if I just stay here? But that, yeah, I mean, would it be a bit of a a rude awakening, you know. Whereas, like you say, Karius comes in, and I think I suspect Mignolet probably looked at it and gone, there's not too much difference between me. Yeah, he's a bit better at this, but I'm a bit better at that. Alisson is better at everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything. And I bet he's better at things that he's never tried, that Mignolet's tried loads at as well. Like Mignolet might be able to... Alisson may never have touched the Rubik's Cube, and Mignolet might be able to do one. But I bet if you just tossed one to Alisson, he'd have it done before it even finished.
I reckon if Alisson and Mignolet were doing this podcast, and Mignolet knocked his cup over, Alisson would catch it from over this side of the table, and Mignolet doesn't have a chance. He's just that much better at pretty much everything.
Honestly, I just don't think... I think Mignolet would go to knock it, and Alisson's hand would be there before he even knocked it off.
What
to
are you
be
doing?
Perfectly honest, well, you're going to knock that off there, mate. Careful.
Go see things. Go see things. Yeah. Alisson sees things.
Absolutely, he does. Mane actually has done an interview and talked about the title this time, Chris. Not one of those complete bullshit, fake made ones by terrible, in inverted commas, news outlet. Nothing mega here, to be honest, but he did say, you know, we believe we're heading in the right direction, but there are some very tough rivals. City were unbelievable last season and very strong again. But talking about the title possibilities, he said, but why not? That's how you do that. That's how you do all that stuff for me. That for me is perfect for this time, for January. You know, I must admit, like I said, I did like the idea of Mane having a massive set of bollocks to some extent, and saying like, yeah, we will be champions, we will win the league. Obviously not true, but just a little lesson for every football player ever.
End it with a question.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, maybe. Of course, it's a possibility. Yeah, I'd like it if we did. Wouldn't that be nice?
Now, see, this was with the official the club website.
No, this was with World Soccer magazine.
Right. Okay. I read it on LiverpoolFC.com or whatever their website. Didn't realise it was there, and I was thinking to myself then, had that been, let's say, World Soccer magazine, I might have just left the "but why not" off. You know what I mean? It's like, because you know what? Without that one little kicker at the end, it's a very different sentence.
Yeah, definitely. He also
fair play to World Soccer magazine, by the way. The old WSM.
Yeah, top quality. There's something about it. I think it's wonderful management from Mane's management. In that World Soccer magazine is one of those. It's such like it's a proper like elite, you know, your footy, you know, World Soccer magazine. It's a proper like when you're dead cool as a teenager and your mates are all reading Match and you go and get World Soccer magazine because you're brilliant and you understand footy. But you know, it also showcases him as a
never heard of it, by the way.
Did you know?
No.
Really? Well, there you go.
I wasn't going to admit it after all that you'd said about it, but then I thought, fuck it, it's
more of a shoot man, yeah.
People will probably tell by my face that I just glazed over while you were talking. I've never heard of World Soccer magazine now.
It says a lot because what you basically position him as one of the biggest names in world football by putting him in that magazine as well. That's the kind of thing. In the 90s, they were all over Italian football. If you wanted to know about Italian football and AC and all that, World Soccer magazine was the magazine to read about all that stuff. But he talked about the front three form as well, which I quite liked. And he said about how people were criticising and saying that they weren't quite firing on all cylinders and they weren't that. And he said, look, we're really competitive. We think we're going to get better. And this plays into what I said a bit on the build-up show. I've just got this real sneaky feeling that we are ready to just go up a gear in what we do. Like, we're really ready to start flexing our muscles for longer spells of games, really, really prepared to start to unleash what we do. If we do, Chris, fuck me. What an end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, we've scored a few goals recently, and I think that makes a difference. You know, coming back against Crystal Palace and putting 4 in, and obviously the 4 against Arsenal earlier on in December and stuff. Liverpool have got gears to move through.
Yeah.
I'm probably not quite as confident as you as that they will do that, to be honest, because I think they are placing a level of importance on defensive stability that will maybe hinder that attacking threat. I think if you were to go 2-0 up in games, then we'll see that. Mm-hmm. But I think we are still going to feel out the opposition. We're going to take a long time to make sure that we make the right decisions at the right time. And so we're going to see a lot of games, I think, where 45 minutes in, it might be 0-0 at half time. If we get a break early in games, you know, get an early goal and maybe get a second, I think then you'll see that I'm just not sure we're going to see that all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
But I can see why you'd say that, and I can see
But
you can see that Firmino's clicking in that 10 and they have a much better understanding, and Salah's being amazing
goals,
at the 9.
That's the difference, is that these lads are all, there's just an upturn. I mean, Salah's just been consistently good, but we consistently get better in second halves of seasons, so there's something in that. Whether we go mad as bollocks 7-0 week in, week out, but I would expect us to be just more for, because we've been creating the chances. You know, we've been doing. It's not like people, I think it's a bit of a misnomer, isn't it, to say like we've been, you know, it's like we've become a defensive side. All of a sudden, we're just better at the defensive stuff. It's not like, it was like the club talking about the Salah things and how he's just been better in his he feels he's been better in his all round game, doing all the right things. It's just that thing of, there's something that clicks in the team when they just go up a gear normally after Christmas. I don't know what it is, and whether it's being unleashed or whether it's just players just finding the form, finding the feet. We've talked this a lot about adapting to a formation. We get better. We're getting better week in week playing in 4-2-3-1. It stands to reason that there'll just come a point where
people can't deal with us.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. Deadline day, Thursday.
Is it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that.
It's been quiet.
Exactly that.
Very quiet.
Yeah, I love the fact that, I mean, obviously certain outlets have tried to stir up a few bits and pieces, but there's been nothing concrete at all. There's been transfers happening, like Alvaro Morata's just moved from an 18-month loan to Atletico Madrid with like a £50 million fee attached if they want to buy him at the end.
Never gonna happen.
No. It's been quite refreshing to not be embroiled in all this stuff. Don't get me wrong, I don't think we necessarily desperately needed anyone, but it would have been just a nice lift, isn't it, when a new player comes in? It's something to get excited about and whatever. But it's been nice to know largely that there's nothing happening.
I think we all, as fans, all understand how Jurgen Klopp works much better now than we used to. I think 2 years ago, I think Jurgen came out and said, "This is my squad for the season," type of a thing. And obviously, you know, a year ago he ended up signing Virgil van Dijk in the January transfer window, and so you think, oh, does he really mean that? I think it's a little bit of a different case. I think now
we'd have had them in the summer if we.
Yeah, exactly. I think the other thing is as well, you know, I think Liverpool, and I think it's good for the squad that Klopp places his trust in those players for an entire year. Like, you know, I know you're the guys that I believe in. We don't need anybody else to achieve our goals this season. Yeah. I think you get an extra couple of % out of that. And I think the other thing is, as fans, we now know that, you know, you can buy a Naby Keita for 50 odd million, but it's not necessarily going to work straight away.
No, God, absolutely.
You know, Fabinho, we know, took him a couple of months. We always cite Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain and Andy Robertson. If Liverpool were to buy a player now anyway, I don't think it's for now. I think it's for next season, in which case, is it worth you upsetting the apple cart? Let's say you bring Timo Werner in. Do you get better performances out of the lads on the pitch right now, or do they start worrying and overthinking? I mean, there's all that to consider at the same time, isn't there?
There is the psychological lift of having someone coming in, and maybe it keeps people honest. You know, you can look at it from both perspectives, can't you? But there's also that thing. You're right. You've got to get people up to speed in what you're doing. Now's not the time of the season.
End of January, let's say 3 to 4 months. End of the season.
It's, you know what, it's a bit like you ever play a computer game, and you know, there's always like it ramps up, so you might get 3/4 of the way through a game. You can't then drop someone who's new into it at that stage of the game, because the difficulty, the complexity, all the things you've done, people are never gonna get to grips with it. Klopp's not running people through the basics in February. No, he's not going, right, here's the fundamentals anymore. The fundamentals are done. It's fine tuning is what we're doing now. So you'd have to get someone who you made the interesting point about the Coutinho thing. Coutinho is one of the rare players who you probably could just about do that, because at least he'd be integrated. He's already integrated into the squad, as it were. But yeah, there's just no time now. We've had that. Okay, yeah, we've got another break to come before buying, but you're not getting a lad up to the level that you need. Because as you say, we've had Keita here since the summer, and he's not even up to the level. We're only just now seeing Fabinho being like he's got to be in the team every week. We're certain of that because he's so good. Shaqiri obviously we actually started pretty well pretty early on, but you know,
it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time, and I think that's the refreshing thing. It's for me. It's not that it's not that Liverpool are or aren't interested in signing players, it's that the fan base doesn't care. You know, you don't see people whinge, wow, we're not signing them. Like, last year it was me. I was there going, I fucking can't believe we've not replaced Phil Coutinho and all this type of stuff. Now there's just this level of trust that you go, sounds okay. If that's what Liverpool are doing, I'm behind it. I support them. The top of the frigging table.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are, obviously Liverpool will stay top of the table regardless of results this week, but Leicester is next on the horizon. I'm just really excited for this, Chris. I mean, look, I'll be honest. I've enjoyed the little break. It's been nice to be able to have time and breathing space to do a few different things, just in a production perspective. This is, I mean, by all accounts, heavy snows forecast for Merseyside on Wednesday, so it could be absolutely horrendous. But just in terms of getting back on it, because I'm starting to get the little bubbling thing in my stomach, the nerves. But it's not fear. It's just that nervous excitement because we're right back on it again. Lest we forget, we've got to get back into the business of being the best team in the country.
Get back into the business of being the business. Yeah. That's what we are at the moment, isn't it? And listen, I look at Leicester and I am nervous, and I'm nervous only because of, you know, Vardy. I'm nervous because I've seen Leicester hurt us over the years, you know, not the last couple of times we've played them, but there's still that fear that you get. There's the fear because of the injuries that we've got of what defence is going to turn up and how Jürgen going to play those lads, and is Fabinho going to be in centre mid, and all the things that we've already discussed. That makes me nervous, but it makes me no less excited. And I think sometimes I've gone into games as a fan with a fear, a genuine fear. Now I'm like, okay, yeah, but I'm actually intrigued as to what's going to happen and see how Klopp is going to overcome this hurdle, because he's overcome so many in his time at Liverpool manager already. Like, I talked about it a second ago, the Phil Coutinho thing. Bigger managers, that could have defined their entire career at a football club. Letting someone like that go at the time that he let someone go. We've got better since. So every time Klopp's presented with a hurdle, he seems to overcome it and we come back stronger. So as much as I am nervous about what we're going to play, I'm equally confident that we're going to get the result that we need.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And in terms of the personnel, obviously we talked about a couple of players. We didn't talk too much about Rafa Camacho on the build-up show. Whether he'll play or not, I don't know. If there's an opportunity there for him, I'd like to see him get that opportunity, because there's a possibility there, and we saw it with Trent going back a few seasons. I don't expect him to come in and be ready-made long-term Liverpool solution at right back, but giving kids these opportunities in isolation, I don't like it. I hate it when we make that 8. You know, you're making 8 changes and then you're looking at the player you're really excited to see doesn't excite, because ultimately he's playing in a team that's lost fluidity, and that was the big problem with that Wolves game. I'd be more than happy to see a lad of his talent coming in, because I just don't think I think he's absolutely fearless. And yes, there are potential pitfalls to it. There always is when you put young lads into sides. I'm all in on Klopp, the Klopp trusting. And him going, okay, no, this is your chance, this is your opportunity. Go out there and show me what you can do. I'm
not, to be honest with you, you know, and I've just give it large about how I trust Jürgen Klopp and stuff like that. My thoughts on this is I actually don't think Jürgen will do that. And I think that's because I'm not sure he does have the trust in Camacho as a right back. If he was to do it, yeah, sound okay. I'll support you like I support every player who puts on that red shirt. But I actually can't see it happening. You know, again, you mentioned that Wolves game there. And listen, we've spoken about this game at length. And I think you're right in what you're saying, by the way. I do think that he wasn't able to shine because of the team that he was playing a part of. But equally, there was some poor mental errors from Camacho that I just think whoever's playing inside of you there, those errors would have occurred regardless. And maybe you could say to me, actually, if Virgil's there, he listens to him and he does drop back a little bit more and stuff. And yeah, I agree, there's a fearlessness about his performances, but for me, he's not ready yet. And that's what it boils down to. And if Jürgen tells me he's ready and puts him into the starting 11 in the Premier League, then I'll pause for thought.
Well, let's work on that. Let's work on that assumption that he does.
That he does, then you've got to back him, haven't you? Yeah. But I don't think he is, and I don't think Jürgen does either. But I don't really know what you want me to say.
So
If Jürgen plays him, then Jürgen thinks he's ready, then I'll go, okay,
yeah,
let's have a look.
We'll talk about
clean slate.
Well, exactly.
Because my judgment on him is clouded by the Wolves game, because I've not seen him in a Premier League game for Liverpool playing right back, and I've only got that one competitive game of football to judge him on that I've looked at with my own two eyes. Jürgen's got a much more well-rounded view of how good he is as a player.
Yeah,
because of everything that goes on behind closed doors.
I suppose we had a lot of this from the Wolves game, didn't we? In terms of how we thought players performed. Like I love Camacho's performance against Wolves. I thought he was class. But what I like about him, this is what I'm kind of driving at, is that rather than worry, he's a young kid, he's an attacking player, there's going to be obvious issues defensively. What he has in an attacking sense is something I think suits Liverpool down to the ground in terms of what we're doing, and this is why, obviously there's still of course, throw Fabinho in there, and there was a shout for him on the bill for Hoover. I think it's much too soon for him, of course, but I like the idea of where we're in a position now where we're throwing a lad in who, this is a game where predominantly we're going to be tasked with going to beating Leicester. In years gone by, you're chucking, I always reference this, you're chucking Martin Skrtel in at right back, or you're having to move Jamie Carragher to right back. We're chucking a lad who defends first. This is why it wouldn't shock me with the Camacho thing, is that, and it's why Milner's been given the choice to go and play at right back, of course, because he's a front foot guy. He's a guy who's comfortable in possession of the football. I am potentially looking at the positives of what Camacho brings. It could be it could be a very exciting addition to what we do.
He could be, and I don't mean to have a go at Rafa Camacho here in any way, shape or form, but he's sixth choice right back at this club at the moment for me. You got Trent Alexander-Arnold, you've got Joe Gomez, you've got James Milner, you've probably got Fabinho there as well. All right, fifth, sorry. And then you've got Rafa Camacho, and I think that is where I see him at the moment. Yeah, I think James Milner was definitely ahead of him in the pecking order for that right back spot, as evidenced by him playing against Crystal Palace. I think the next guy up is probably Fabinho there, and then it's Rafa Camacho. But I agree with everything that you're saying. Milner, why he was so good against Crystal Palace, for the problems that he had with Zaha, was that he beat Zaha 3 times at the other end and gets an assist. Yeah. Our right back got an assist in that game, their left winger got an assist, so you can totally understand what James Milner's doing there. And Fabinho, equally, like I said on the build-up show, he's great going forwards. Yeah. Absolutely superb. He loves those little 1-2s, and I think he's a good attacking option for us as well. Yeah. So I just feel that they offer that little bit more defensive stability, and it's almost like if we were sixth and there was no chance of top 4, I actually would probably say, let's get Camacho in.
Oh yeah,
let's get Camacho in. But we're second season Kenny here when he's come back, and the job's on the line, and not only that, the frigging title's on the line, which is more important. Yeah. And that's why I think it has to cloud your opinion, and if he doesn't and Camacho starts, then that tells me even more about him than anything else, because we are going for the title. Yeah. And that is a huge decision for a manager to make. So if Klopp then puts him in against the side that we've historically struggled against over the last 5-6 years, then I'll go, cannot wait, because he thinks he's ready, and I will back that 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, it's that thing. It's like the Nathaniel Klein argument. On the balance of it, again, this all this boils down to Klein wanted to leave ultimately, so we chose to let him leave. But in terms of that thing of, we know what Klein brings and we know what Klein doesn't bring to your side, and as I say, I'm excited for what I saw in the Wolves game. It was the stuff in the opposition half that I liked the most about it, because look, it's the stuff that gets your ass off your seat, isn't it, ultimately? So yeah, I be really interested to see if Klopp does that and what we go with ultimately, because as you say, Fabinho's there, knowing that you've got, I mean, again, for Camacho, you've got Fabinho there. If you get the nod,
that's a big boost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big boost.
Absolutely. A few questions to get through, but before we do, the lads, it was Ross and Ben this week on the Around the League podcast on the redmentv.com. It's a little bit of a wider look at the things that happen outside of the world of Liverpool, and as the name suggests, around the league.
Do you welcome or entertain the idea of the FA Cup having the extra prize of added points in the league? So if you win the FA Cup, you get 5 extra points in your respective league.
That's a wild suggestion.
It's
isn't
interesting, isn't it? Because if both Liverpool and Man City, would Jurgen Klopp's approach to the Wolves game have changed if there were 5 points on offer in the Premier League?
I think it'd have to be higher than 5 because you think the amount of rounds that you got to go through in the teams.
In today's
I know. But you think how many games you got to go through first when you could effectively do what we've done and go, fuck that.
Yeah.
I'm not playing an extra 6 games.
But so there's 2 ways of looking at it. You can look at it
15
as
points and we can have a conversation.
15 points. That's a lot. That 15-point wins a league. You could
Yeah,
be
but you
fourth.
say
But you could be fourth and win the FA Cup, and then you win the league. Like that's basically how that works.
But then again, you've gone through an extra 5-6 games to go and do that, where you can just jib it up and go, actually, I've got my players fit and win the games that you wouldn't have won anyway because you've done that.
Yeah, get that and a whole host of other amazing content on the redmentv.com. The Newsroom podcast last week Chris did with Chris Baskin, which is fantastic. You can get a little snippet of that in the Match Build-Up Show, which I highly recommend. It's available on YouTube and in podcast form for absolutely free off the website as well, so get involved with that. We had Andy Grant. We had one of the maddest, probably the maddest build-up shows we've had. Obviously, people don't know Andy's story. He was in the Royal Marines and was blown up in Afghanistan, and he tells us a bit about his story and what he did from there. Totally different to everything we've done, but yeah, highly recommended. If you've
The
not
stuff
been
that
on
he's
the
gone through, and I'm on Twitter last night moaning about lamps in my house being turned on and the room's getting darker, you know what I mean? And this, it puts your life into perspective at times. And you'd think I wouldn't put the tweet out, but it did bother me, so I did.
So you did, because that's what Twitter's for. It's for minge bagging about things, like, you know what I mean? Absolutely. And
also not telling my wife that I did that.
For passive aggressive marital issues, like, definitely. Copite 305 at Copite Chronicles with a K. If you had
Sound like a cereal.
Yeah. Copite Crunch. Yeah. If you had a spare ticket for the final game of the season in which we would lift the Premier League trophy, would you sell that spare ticket to a friend for face value or sell it to a tourist for massive profit? Discuss. This has been a big deal. Lately, you know, the tout price. We had a question about this. They're going for thousands already on tout websites. There's an obvious answer, I think, is being led down this path, is that, you know, sell it for face value, and I'd like to stake. I probably would, but I think that what this does is this demonises people who sell tickets on. Yeah,
you don't know the backstory. I think a lot of the time when it comes down to it, I mean, I know somebody who, when we were talking at the end of the 13-14 season, who said to me, "That's my season ticket for the next 2 years," and I really struggle to pay for those season tickets. You know, it's a massive expense, and I think it's too easy to just judge a book by its cover at times, and I don't think they should always do that. You know, if the person says, "Yeah, I just want to rinse them," then you're just a prick. Yeah, but you're a prick regardless.
Yeah. I don't get. We look. It's the world that we live in. You know, we end up having to pay over the odds for tickets all the time on stuff, because it is what it is. It is very hard to get to Liverpool games, and doubly so when Liverpool are doing really well. It's easier when Liverpool are shit, but when they're dead good, everyone wants to jump on the bandwagon. But so I think there's, again, you're right, there's no one size fits all answer for this. If there's people, I think there will be people out there who, let's use it in a gig example. I know there's people who go on for every major gig, and they're on there with 10 computers, and they hoover up a load of tickets and they stick them out on there, and they do that for a pure business reason. And in that perspective, that makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't like that so much. However, as you say, there will be people there who will be faced with that decision of potentially missing seeing Liverpool win their first league title in 30 years with their own eyes, but it will give them the money to go to to be able to go to every home game for the next 2 seasons. And who's the bigger fan? You know, if there's a difference between not being able to afford your season ticket anymore, and seeing that game, but you'd have to walk away from your season ticket. There's no right answer there.
Yeah. And just for the sake of it, I'd give it to my dad, by the way. Yeah. Is what I would do, because my dad doesn't get to go to games all the time and stuff, and you know, it would be a no-brainer. I probably wouldn't charge him.
You'd make him take you for a pint for it, like, yeah, definitely. But again, I get that. But that's a tough thing in any walk of life, because if someone walks up to you and says, you know that thing that you paid £40 for? I want to give you £2,000 for it. That's a very, very, very difficult thing. And the problem is, because football is such a tribal thing and it's almost a pseudo-religious thing, it gets taken away from the fact that sometimes that money is quite a important thing, important factor in people's lives, and you know, some people like money more than they like football, and they're the kind of people, we don't want it on field, so sell your tickets and sell it to someone who wants it so much that they're prepared to pay 2,000. But again, sorry, this also another point on this notion that it's all going to tourists, again, I think that's a bit of like, it's a damning people with faint praise or beating people with a stick and all that kind of thing. It's not all going to go to people who just want to, you know, people who don't care about Liverpool. The vast majority of people who are going to pay over the odds are the people who are desperate to be at Anfield for that. Like, it is a once in a lifetime thing, but it might be people who've not gone for years.
It's probably just as likely to be members card holders who had 10 games this season and couldn't get 20.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. But yeah, no, exactly that. Grace asks us, what's one Liverpool player you couldn't help but love even though he was an awful player?
Alberto Moreno.
Okay.
You know, I think it's from doing this every week and doing these Q&As and stuff. I just think I've got this like little bit of love for him, and you know, not on the football field. You know, I don't think he's a great player. I don't think he's the worst player we've ever had either. To be fair, like, but I just think he's a lovable guy, and I think you can't help but he's an enthusiastic person. He comes up a lot in all these like what type of player and all this. I just think I've harvested the love for Alberto Moreno that I never thought possible before doing these shows.
I think it's an interesting shout. For me, it's like an Igor Biscan. You know, ultimately he was fine. I gave him more support than he probably his ability level would have demanded. You know, in the modern world, if you shoot your shit and you don't get support. Nah, I always liked Igor Biscan, and he had the best chant going. Igor. Again, if you think about the good players we've got now who don't have songs or chants, Igor Biscan was one for me. Toro LFC, who would you pick as a footy tennis partner, current, past or present?
Okay, I narrowed it down to two, and they're very different, and there's probably one answer that, did win out. It was Luis Suarez and Jamie Carragher.
Okay.
Right, and I know what you're thinking. Why the bloody hell would you pick Jamie Carragher for a football tennis thing?
No, not at all. Carry on. I've got similar to my reason. I
just wanted someone who's going to fight for everything, and he was the first player that came to mind. I was, you know what? If we're going for this footy table tennis world championship, I need someone who's going to give as much as I'm going to give.
Footy table tennis.
What are we doing?
Footy tennis.
Regardless.
Okay.
I want somebody who's going to fight tooth and nail alongside me for everything, and Carragher came first to mind. Then I was like, and I want someone with loads of talent, and I was like, Suarez is both.
Suarez does all
okay, Suarez is the right answer on this one.
Exactly how I worked it. So I went through a number of players. It was like Mascherano, and I was like Momo Sissoko pre-eye injury, because he's going to cover the whole court for me. He's going to be doing all my running. He can be, you know, whether he needs to be based on or whatever. He's the guy who's going to do all the running. And then I was like, yeah, Luis Suarez does all of that stuff, so let's just have Luis Suarez all day long. Brilliant. We got the Q&A coming up this week, which is an extension of this podcast, but a bit more daft and a bit more personality driven. Questions, a couple more wrestling questions, including if Redmen TV presenters were WWE characters, who would they be and why? Chris Watton, who also then followed up with Steers 100% Gilbert. Talking about rule additions to the Premier League game, who would Chris and I like to tag team against in a tables, ladders and chairs match from the world of football, and a whole host of other things as well. So get over to the redmentv.com, sign up for that. The Q&A, we do it every single week. It's always a bit of a laugh, a bit more irreverent than the more serious stuff than we do, but the serious stuff is there as well, as you've seen and will have heard already. So yes, thank you very much for watching or for listening to this. Wocha.